number of macOS devices in enterprises is growing fast. More and more companies ask, how do we manage them the right way? And I think that is a very important question. For me, the obvious answer is with Intune. Most of us already use Intune to manage Windows devices, and with all its new features, Intune is now the perfect tool to manage macOS devices as well. And with macOS 26 or Tahoe, both admins and users are already seeing big changes. And the best part, Apple and Microsoft are only getting started. In this video, I will take you through the full journey. We will set up the Apple Business Manager, connect it with Intune. We will configure platform single sign-on. We will try the new native labs configuration in Intune, and we'll also have a look at FileVault. I'll show you the policies, how they work, and what they look like on the device. The demos include features that do work today, but I will also give you a sneak peek at what's coming next. If your macOS device isn't registered yet in ABM, then you have basically two options. First, you can ask the vendor to do it for you, or second, you can also do it manually. And manually is something that I'm going to show here is with the Apple Configurator application on your iPhone. After installing the Apple Configurator app, just open it up. And as long as you're inside this region selection screen on your macOS device and you hold it close enough to your macOS device, it will show up a pattern. Scanning it will just register your macOS device in ABM, which will take a couple of seconds. During the reboot of the macOS device, we can just go ahead in the Apple Business Manager and verify if the device is there. Looking for the first 4 characters was just enough to find my device. So here it is. I can also see the serial number and I can also see the device management server it was assigned to. And if I also wanted to, I can also unassign it and assign it to something else with the menu button on the top right. Very good. And now that we have verified that the device is an ABM and assigned to the correct Intune tenant, we can now also go ahead to look directly in the Intune tenant as well. So we open up the portal, go to the devices, macOS, and then choose enrollment. And inside enrollment, we can select the enrollment program token. And inside there, we will find the token, which is showing us that it's connected to the ABM. And under devices, we will see one device, which is not ours, but we can also trigger just the synchronization between Intune and ABM and wait a couple of seconds, click on refresh, and there it is. I know that a lot of people watching this video will be familiar with the autopilot and ASP principle that we have for Windows and Intune. Basically for macOS, we just have to create an enrollment profile where we can configure administration and standard account for the user. So let's go ahead and do this next. Going back to the enrollment program token screen, you can just select the profiles option there. In my case, I already have a profile, so I don't have to create one. If you don't have one, just click on create. And you can just copy and paste the settings that I have. So let's have a look at the properties of this enrollment profile. And if we have a look at the management settings, you can see that I have set the following settings, including enroll with user affinity, set up a system with modern authentication, and I have also set the locked enrollment to yes. And locked enrollment to yes means that the user himself cannot offboard devices from device management, which is very important if you have corporate devices. Next, let's have a look at the setup assistant. So we can now configure what we want to show the user. So the less we show the user, the less things can be complicated for the whole user experience, right? But we have to show at least one screen definitely, which is the FileVault screen. If you don't show this FileVault setup screen, enabling FileVault during setup assistant will not work, right? We will later on configure a FileVault policy. There you can enable the setting which says force enable set in setup assistant. But it only works when you configure this screen to also show during the setup assistant. And also what I really like is to also configure the location service, which then the user can enable by themselves, which is a real nice user experience for setting the date and time automatically. And now let's focus on the next setting, which is the local administrator account part. And this is the labs part. So we have waited for this months, if not years, to happen. So labs for macOS is now natively integrated into Intune, but it's a payload in the enrollment profile. What that means is that you have to re-enroll a macOS device to Intune to let it create automatically an admin account. And what I have done here is I said, hey, yes, create a local admin account. The local account's username is the serial number, but the display name of that user is admin. So if you see a prompt for an admin on that device, the admin is the name inside this prompt. because the user also have to create a new user, I have set the account type of that created user to standard. So basically, the user experience is as follows. The user goes through the setup assistant, and at the very last step, it creates a local user. And that local user is, by the settings here, a standard user. And Intune creates a secondary account during the setup assistant, which is called, in this case, admin. And only this admin account is administrator. The local account that the user is creating himself is then a standard user. Well, now, how does it really look for the user? The user will be greeted with a country or region selector, will be asked about the languages, and then it will be greeted by the device manager window. And as you can see, we get an info that this device is now managed by a company. The message here appears only if you have that device registered in ABM. Next up, the user will be asked to log in with their own Microsoft account. And what that really means is that the device will be then registered in Enter ID, and the primary user of that device will show the user that is logging in into the device at this current stage. After the user has now successfully signed in, you see a little info box on the bottom left saying that the enrollment profile is now being installed. What that really means is that the settings that we have previously configured in the enrollment profile is now being applied, including the local account management. You will also see that the text will change a couple of times because also the settings and configuration profiles will be applied at this stage. After the policies and the enrollment profile has been successfully applied and installed on that device, the user now has to create its own local user account. And as you can see, some text boxes are already grayed out, and that's because we have configured in the enrollment profile that the username must match the full name in the Enter ID. So why is it important? It's important because sometimes we see people, for example, creating some fantasy names for their macOS local account, which is fine, but it's really hard to understand later on who this person really is, because the name that you input here is also the primary user visible in your Intune and Enter ID. Next up, the user has to input his password. And the password has to match the password policies of Intune. So if you have configured a password policy for those devices, either a PIN or a very complex password policy via regex, it will apply at this stage also. So the password that has been created for the local account will then also be compliant with your policy as well. On the next page, the user will be able to enable the location services, and after that we'll see a welcome screen and then get access to the desktop. The user is now on the desktop, and all the policies that we have configured are now applied because of the await final configuration payload or setting inside the enrollment profile. We can now check the company portal app if everything went well. So let's find the company portal app, open it and sign in. After the sign-in was successful, the company portal app will show an error. It says the device is not registered. And what it really means is, because I have applied a platform single sign-on configuration, it does expect the user to finish this process before it is compliant. When Tahoe is finally out, you will have a way to configure platform single sign-on during the setup assistant. For the sake of this demo, I will go through the process manually. But before we start, and I know a lot of people have been looking for a working platform single sign-on configuration in Intune, here is mine. You can just copy and test it in your environment as well if you don't have one already. And the most important thing that I would mention here is that it uses the secure enclave, which is generally more secure and phishing resistant, and it's more secure than the password synchronization, even though the user experience is much better with the password synchronized between the Microsoft account and your local account, but it's not recommended. It's not phishing resistant, so I'm using secure enclave. So back on the device, we see a notification on the top right, which is also visible for the user. And clicking on it will then trigger the whole process of setting up the platform single sign-on, including that the user has to first input the local password, the local user's password, and then has to sign in with his Microsoft account, and then also has to approve the company portal application in the system settings as a passkey provider. This process takes a couple of seconds. Now that the process is finished, we can stay in the system settings and look at the users and groups on this device. And basically clicking on the local user's name and the info icon on the right side will give us information if the platform single sign-on has been configured or not. And while we are already at the system settings, let's also have a look at the FileVault, if it's been correctly enabled or not. So in the system settings, go to the privacy and security, and then scroll to the very bottom, and there's a FileVault option there. Clicking on it will then show that the FileVault is enabled and it's managed by a profile. Let's now also have a look at the FileVault policy in Intune, and I think the most important thing here is that we are force enabling the FileVault during the setup assistant. And as I also mentioned in the beginning of this video, you have to enable the screen and the setup assistant so FileVault can be activated automatically during the setup assistant. So FileVault is an old story. It did work before and it works still, which is nice. But more interesting is the Labs feature, which is now natively available in Intune. And in the system settings, we can have a look at the admin account that has been created automatically by the enrollment profile that we have configured previously. And as you can see, the admin is really an admin user, and my own user is just a standard user. So that standard user cannot install any applications on that device or run any sudo commands. And to prove you that, I will open up the terminal and execute a sudo prompt. And as you can see, it gives me an error. Let's now test how the user would install an application. So for this demo, let's download and install the VLC Media Player and drop it to the applications folder, and then we will get prompted with this admin request. So now that it's asking for the admin user, I can just type in the display name of the admin user that we also have defined in the enrollment profile. And the only missing thing is now the Labs password. So let me type that in, and then after that I will show you where you can find it in Intune. You can now see that the VLC Media Player has been successfully installed. To get the Labs password for that certain device, you just have to visit the Intune portal and the device object in there. And if you go to the password and keys, you can click on the show local admin password, and it will then just present you the local admin password. That's the full journey of managing macOS with Intune, from Apple Business Manager to Platform as Single Sign-On, Labs, and FileVault. You've seen how everything connects and what's possible today, and even a sneak peek at what's coming next from Apple and Microsoft. That's all for this video. Thanks for watching.